I want to give you 5 mistakes that you could be making with your wedge that aren't going to help your wedge game at all. Let's get stuck into the lesson right now. First mistake is all to do with ball position. The amount of times I see people getting a wedge out of the bag and thinking, right, well, I've got to try and spin this. So what I'm going to try and do is place that ball right at the back of my stance. So as I set up to this one here, what I'm talking about is something where as I place this ball now into my stance, as we see here off this camera, the ball gets literally right off the back foot, almost off the big toe of my back foot there. And the problem with that is that as I do this, I'm going to be coming down too steeply into the golf ball. So I'm going to take massive divots, and the times it's done is generally when you are catching the ground before the golf ball. So the common thought process would be, well, I'm hitting the ground about an inch before the ball. If I move the ball back an inch, I'll get the ball first, so that would be perfect. So we end up seeing something like this there. If we have a line running up from the middle of the body, it's not where we want the ball to be, right at the back. Ideally, for a wedge, I would like to see it on the middle to maybe just a little bit back, because what I want to do is try and still take a divot, but not a huge slab. I don't really want to feel like I'm trapping it down. Yes, I want to hit down on it, but only a little bit. So when we've got our wedges out, let's make sure, first thing, get rid of that first mistake, that we get the ball a little bit more centered. Don't have it right off your back foot. That isn't going to lead to good wedge play. So first mistake here, let's clip this one off. Ball just behind center. Took a little bit too much divot, but actually I've got away with it because I wasn't too steep as I've gone through there. Let's move on to the second mistake. The next thing I see people do, and this falls into that ball going back in the stance, it's how we actually use the wedge. If we look at this wedge closely here, it's got something where it's got 10 on it. So 54 is the loft and then mid 10, and that's the bounce. But when we get our ball too far back in our stance and we end up getting too much shaft lean, so the shaft leaning towards the target a little bit too much like so, what I'm then doing is taking all the bounce out of this golf club. So my leading edge then starts to become like a knife. It's quite a sharp part of the golf club. And again, if I'm coming down steep and then I've got this knife-like or spade-like leading edge going into the ground, it's gonna just go in and stop. I don't want that. I want it to go into the turf and carry on and then come out through. So as I play a wedge shot, let's again make sure A, that ball isn't back, but B, don't get your hands leaning too far excessively forward, almost looking like a cricket shot here. Not only am I presenting the leading edge too much, what I'm also doing is taking a massive amount of loft off this golf club. So 54 turns into something where I might have taken 10 degrees off it, so it will probably go a little bit further as I'm going to hit it. So as we do it, let's make sure, again, if we've got the line on the body, I would want to see that ball is pretty much on it or just behind it, and then from there my hands would just be leaning ever so slightly in front of the golf ball. What I would like to think of a good word to describe my wedge setup would be neutral. I don't want any excessive back, forwards, leaning back, leaning forwards with the shaft. So ball would be neutral, shaft lean would be pretty neutral, just a little bit towards my target there. So then as we clip this one off, bit of a better strike on that one, not as much divot, nicely towards my target there. Let's take a look at the next mistake you could be making with your wedges. Guys, I hope you're enjoying this video so far. If you are, do remember to hit that subscribe button down below. I want you to get better at the game, and you can do that by joining me every week here on the channel with your free golf lessons. Hit that. Let's go and look up the next tip. The next mistake that we could be making is the perception of how we see a wedge being hit. When we see them on TV, they go high up in the air, soaring up over the green, land softly maybe with a little bit of spin. And it's that perception that leads me to do something in my golf swing that I shouldn't be doing. And that is that as I come through, I think to myself, this ball needs to go high in the air. So what I end up doing is actually making a golf swing now where we see I've got a good neutral setup, but then from there as I'm coming down, I actually end up moving my sternum behind the golf ball and almost spinning and getting it pointing up towards the sky here, so I end up looking something like this. Now that is going to lead to me either catching the ground early here, thinning the golf ball and we get that ball that goes rocketing a million miles through the green, or if I do actually catch it, because of me leaning back and getting my sternum behind the golf ball, as we see here, I would have loads of loft on the golf club face. It would feel like an okay contact, but what actually would happen is the ball goes higher and lands shorter, and that is not what we want. So what we've got to try and make sure is that once we've adopted that neutral setup, from here then, I'm going to feel like my sternum, as I'm working down, covers the golf ball, feels like it's moving over the front foot, and then I feel like I've turned level towards the target here. I don't want to feel like I've got it going back behind myself. So we take it here, get that sternum on with my neutral setup. From there then, as I go through it, feel like it moves just in front of the golf ball, not back behind it. And as we see, a nice little strike there as we go through. The next tip that we could be making problems with as we go through it, and this is something where you need to go and practice this, you need to go out on a driving range or on the practice ground and figure it out. The amount of times when we have a half shot, a 3/4 shot, and we see a real difference in the length of swings. So as I go and take my setup here, I've got a 54 degree and I'm stood 90 yards away from the flag. What I would see a lot of people doing, make a full golf swing knowing that this club goes 115 yards for me, get all the way up and then panic and think this is going to go too far. So then on the way down we see the tempo change, I get slower and then I get shorter as I go through, and then I'm not getting a consistent contact. What we've got to try and figure out is our length of swings, and for myself I have 3 points that I go through to try and make it. So again, it revolves around you going doing some practice, but I would make a swing where I feel my hands level to my belt, and for my 54 this goes 40 yards, and then for my next swing I feel my hands get level with my chest, and then I know that that goes 70 yards, and then as I go through there I go up to my next one where I go up to my shoulders, and that goes 100 yards for me. So as I'm going through, I would make each swing and I would try and match it, or maybe go a little bit further on the way through to try and regulate my distance. I wouldn't make a full golf swing and then try and stop on the way through. So from here now, I can know that at 90 yards, it's going to be somewhere near my shoulder or just shy of it. And then from there we hit a pretty nice shot. It's only a couple of feet away from the flag because I know how far I'm swinging the golf club, and what I can do is match the tempo. I don't feel like I've got to quit on it or speed up. I can match those tempos. The fifth and final tip, get your equipment ready for the shot. The amount of times I see people with wedges like this where there's grass in it, there's mud all over the face, and then they're asking, well, why didn't that hole, why didn't it spin? Why didn't that ball grab? Why has it run through? Why has it gone so much further? Why has it gone shorter? If we've not got a tool that isn't ready for the job, and all it takes, something so simple, T-peg, get into your grooves, give it a little bit of a clean like so, and just make sure each time you're playing a wedge, because these are the shots where we need a serious amount of control. Doesn't matter too much on a 9-iron, an 8-iron, a 7-iron, yes, we want clean grooves on those, but here when I'm trying to get that spin, even especially when I'm in close around the greens, if I've got any little bits of dirt in there and I don't get the spin I want, it's going to run on and it makes that putt a little bit harder. So go through that list, guys, make sure you're not making those 5 mistakes. If you can get all those right, you're going to make your wedge game a whole lot better. Guys, thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button as well, and I'll see you in the next video.